Hi, everyone. Welcome again to our new speaker, Simona Smirnova. And my name is Maribel Rodriguez. I am the founder of Love for Immigrants. So, Love for Immigrants is a social space for immigrant support. It aims to connect immigrants to their communities as respected, loved, heard individuals by sharing their narratives through art and storytelling, and we hope you enjoyed this art healing event. So, Simona is a musician, a composer, and an educator based in New York City, and we're so lucky to have her. Not only does she have a master's degree from Berklee College of Music, she is also from Lithuania and adds this beautiful texture and unique style to her music through folklore, including themes of belonging, and thank you, Simona, for being here. Feel free to introduce yourself a little bit more.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm a musician, a conkless player, a vocalist, a composer from Lithuania. I was born and raised there, although ethnically I'm not Lithuanian. So that's another probably thing we could explore a little bit in our conversation. And I live in the United States for the past 8 years. I graduated from Berkeley, and now I'm a full-time musician residing in New York City.
Wonderful. And you also play with your jazz quartet in New York City, correct?
Yes. So there are a couple of things going simultaneously. Um, as a lot of musicians probably do, they compose and they perform. So there's this jazz quartet project ongoing. So I perform in live music venues in New York. I also tour quite a lot. So I once a year I go for this annual tour in Australia and New Zealand, and I also play with a quartet, and I play in each city with a new set of musicians. This way I get to collaborate with a lot of talented musicians around the world. And from my composing side, I compose mostly string quartet, chamber music, original material. My latest project is string quartet score for the silent film The Passion of Joan of Arc. So, yeah.
Exciting. Thank you for that. Let's go straight into our interview questions. So the first one is, can you explain a little bit more about the themes you include in your work of family and belonging?
Um, I guess the artists a lot of times incorporate the themes of something they're trying to resolve themselves or heal themselves, as our topic is. And as I mentioned before, I quite a mix of different ethnicities, and I consider myself Lithuanian, but I was born into mixed family, Slavic mixed family. So it's a combination of Russian, Polish, Belarus, Ukrainian, Jewish mix of my family, and zero Lithuanian, really. And I don't even look like Lithuanian. I always stood out at school, but and also was born in a very strange time, which was a revolutionary time. I was born during Singing Revolution 1989, while Lithuania was breaking out from Soviet Union. So there's this political tensions there, and it was quite a not a good thing being a Russian overall. That's a broad term, but a Russian with Russian last name as mine. And I was raised like to be Lithuanian and speak Lithuanian. Lithuanian is my native language. So it's um, it's interesting how you go through life and you try to define who you are and where you belong and where is your home and who's your family, who's your friends, where do you return, where do you go, what's your direction, the sense of direction. So that's why I try to explore these themes of belonging, because I guess it's a puzzle for myself, what culture I belong to. And now, while I'm living in the United States and I identify myself a lot with this culture, the current culture, especially in New York, very diverse melting pot of cultures, which I feel like I belong to that more than anything than one. So, and along with this, it goes all this. well, I wouldn't want to say trauma, but like drama, I guess, drama of trying to fit in different places, and within styles, within disciplines, and within ethnicity. Because like trying to fit in Lithuanian world, I've always felt a little too Slavic, and in Slavic world, I, you know, a little too Lithuanian. So all these things, it's complicated. Um, okay.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that, combination of ideas about growing up and how that felt to have multiple identities, and also how through your music you express some of those things that you saw within your country, and including the political scene there and how that inspired your music. Thank you.
And
Go
another,
ahead.
just a little thing to add, that another thing is interesting to analyze how within the distance of time you see things differently. Like I didn't really think much about very strong transitional moment within a country, how that impacted me and how it impacted my growth as a person and as an artist. And now within some distance of time, I actually can see that. So it's interesting to discover that with time, of with maturity and with age.
Absolutely. And for a little pivot here, we're going to your first album, thinking about wondering what inspired you about Franz Kafka's A Hunger Artist, since your first album has a lot to do with that.
Yes, thank you for this question. So I always was a fan of Franz Kafka and in general of literature and reading a lot of classics. And I learned of Kafka and read most of his texts when I was a teenager, when I was 17. And out of all his novels and short stories, A Hunger Artist really caught my attention. It was fascinating. First of all, how he wrote it in 1922, and he described this protagonist as a performing artist, while the phenomenon of performing arts as a genre wasn't even a thing in 1922. So he was kind of ahead of his time. And the religious aspect of it, because the hunger artist would fast in extended periods of time, such as 40 days, and it's like a direction to Jesus, and how other people took pleasure in watching him starve himself. So that story really attracted my attention, and I think at that point I was interested in the idea of abandonment, like how abandoned the hunger artist was, and it really struck a chord within me, but I didn't know what to do with it yet. And it took me 10 years. It took me 10 years. And then when I was 27, I was a part of Berkeley Interdisciplinary Arts Institute, and I needed a theme for my project. And I thought, a hunger artist. So I started that project as a short 15-minute dance and jazz piece. And then it really grew, and I loved, and I felt really good about it, very aligned within my path and what is this project is talking about. And with this 10 years of experience in between, from the first impulse to actually realization of the project, uh, it, I learned about way more themes than I thought when I was 17. So it's the theme of abandonment, and a theme of belonging, and a theme of individual versus collective. That's probably was the main theme I was uh, dwelling on while I was composing. And it became this 1 hour jazz rhythm section plus string quartet piece with modern dance and theater. And I decided to record it. So it grew into this whole thing. But it was very uncanny. And I was still a student in Boston. And it was like very strange, very different for what's happening in Boston art scene at that time. So, yeah, so all these themes, and I think there's some sort of like love for protagonist, for a strong character, and how strong and fragile he was. I think those qualities always interest me a lot.
And isn't strength and vulnerability so tied and connected? And all those themes of, the collective versus the individual, and how much, dissonance and even unwellness sometimes a human being can have, and trying to balance those two elements within. So that's really great. Moving on to, well, first of all, congratulations for your grant with the Queen's Council of the Arts.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
wonderful. And we're moving right along to that song that the grant is helping you create, which is a timeless nomad. So how did you decide to create that story as part of your music?
So, thank you. First of all, this is it's amazing to receive some sort of encouragement and support from somewhere outside. So I'm grateful to Queen's Council on the Arts. And actually, it was a simultaneous grant with Sukasa grant, which I did like a residency teaching class for senior center. So it was a nice thing at once. So Timeless Nomad. It's actually a large piece. It's not a song. It's I proposed to write an opera, a chamber piece, an hour long, for 17 musicians and voice. So it's a new work grant, and I've been thinking about writing a chamber piece for a long time. But as we all know, writing a large piece for a large instrumentation is very demanding, time-wise and financially, to hire all the musicians. So it's been always on my mind. I always wanted to write chamber, and kind of like walking around all the time thinking chamber. I want chamber with theater. I want chamber with theater. But how do I do this living, in New York and rehearsing, and you have to pay everyone for rehearsals and for studio time and everything, and venues and insurances, and it really adds up. So I have to think about it. And I thought I need just a little window, and I'll push this project through. So New Work Grant was because it's still in the process, is a little window for me to push this project. And I picked the theme of Timeless Nomad, a singular, um, also a theme of us being, as timeless nomads, something beyond time, that we kind of, at this point, we don't belong anywhere, but we belong everywhere at the same time. And the sense of belonging comes from sense of connection rather than a physical or geographical place. And I felt like it is something what is strongly relatable to my own story, as well as to people here, and especially in the US. So I felt like it could be something, could be healing for me, it could be healing for others as well. And through my own story, I could probably touch other people's hearts, in some way. So I just wanted to analyze, and it's timeless because it's beyond time. It's been before, it will be in the future. It changes its forms, it changes its political structures and presence, and different forms of the whole phenomena of traveling. But I just think that it's something beyond time, so that's why I call it Timeless Nomad. And again, as a protagonist, but this time is my own.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. I was so intrigued in what you were saying. I'm like, okay, what's my next question? And the next one is actually going a little bit into the healing aspect of things. What is the relationship between that healing process of being in a childhood state and art?
When I read this question, I had this imagery right away of myself being a child. So again, when I was born, it was very rough situation in the country, because we were breaking from communism to capitalism, and everything was vague and unclear. And we grew up very poor, and didn't really have much attention from my parents, because they had a lot to deal with at that time. And as a child, I felt very sad most of the time. And that nursing, which I was really needing for, and kind of starving for, even, I really didn't receive it. So I felt like I was a very emotional child, and very sad most of the time, so curious and sad. And I remember my school, um, when I was 6 or even 5, they called our house and they said, "Would Simona want to participate in a play and be and act something?" And it was like puppetry and trees and And I remember I was so happy, and I said this phrase that, "Oh, I'm needed somewhere," and I remember saying that phrase, "I'm needed somewhere. I belong somewhere." That someone is thinking of me in that way um, was very rewarding. I was very happy, and I was just so happy. And going to rehearsals, even those parts were silly. I was just like a tree somewhere in the corner, but it wasn't. I didn't care about it. I just wanted to be on stage, and I felt like it's a different universe which I can be a part of by creating it by with my presence. And I felt like in this reality and with this sort of gravity, I feel needed and I feel that I can contribute. And that was healing. And then after that, my mom took me to the music school, and I was 7 at the moment, and I played the Lithuanian zither, which is actually here behind me. So that was the instrument I started my musical journey, and I heard that instrument, and that's it. I wanted to be the kankles player. It's called kankles. I wanted to be the kankles player. I wanted to be the musician, an artist. It didn't really matter for me. Is it like an actress or a director or something? Stage presence, the most importantly. So I feel like the yeah, art and music world really took me through the hardest times.
It's so important, I think, what you just mentioned of how having this opportunity to join a community in art during a difficult time really showcases, I think, the power of art. And I can personally relate to that growing up in Brooklyn and being very much in a place where at least there were art opportunities. It made life just a little bit nicer. So definitely thank you for that. Sharing so vulnerably. Appreciate that. Your strength.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
mhm,
And now what I'm thinking that no matter where you live, you kind of everyone from the sensitive artistic nature kind of goes for that. You can, be raised in Brooklyn or, in a village somewhere, or it's just kind of, that's what I think it's beyond time and beyond land, because we're all unified in this kind of vulnerable need to connect and be a part of something, feel that we are needed, we want it, we appreciate it, all these things.
yes, absolutely. And going into this idea of your roots again, and thank you for sharing that. What part of your heritage, your time in Lithuania, has influenced your art and also your notion of healing?
What part of um I think that in terms of form of expression, I definitely, just the fact that I play an ethnic instrument, it's already coloring the whole um landscape of sound or soundscape. The soundscape, because I play the ethnic instrument, and since I play the ethnic instrument, I had to learn a lot of folklore and folk music, and I had a quite a distinctive relationship to it, because as my ethnicity, I am not really Lithuanian, so I kind of learned it almost like a foreign culture without really understanding that it's a foreign culture. And so now I feel, by living in the US, I have this kind of like a collage of Baltic, Lithuanian um, fabric of folklore, which I'm using in my music every day, which is folklore, tales, those like chant like songs, all kinds of folkloric rituals in terms of celebrations like midsummer or Christmas and stuff like that. So that is just organically embedded in the fabric of body of my work. but that is in terms of form, like what people can hear and recognize. In terms of actually the concept, the meaning behind everything, and the push for creativity, I feel like I I don't know. I feel it's the same thing, just trying to understand who are you, where you're coming from, and where you're going. Is just the same answer like my first or second answer in this our conversation. Um, I think that is the timeless nomad problem is just trying to analyze and heal yourself just through constantly challenging um, your own sense of belonging. Like, what is your family, and what it means to have family, and what defines family. So all these things. So that is the concept or the idea of the work. But in terms of form, it's just instrumentation and scales and and folkloric rituals.
So, Simona, as we're wrapping up, what is your last thought for the audience?
I would like to just everyone to keep an eye for my latest project. Um, we already mentioned opera Timeless Nomad for chamber, orchestra, and voice, which will be a live show and premiered next year after pandemic is over and we can actually do a live performance, as well as a recording of my second album I'm working on right now. It's a string quartet score for the silent film The Passion of Joan of Arc. So album will be called Joan of Arc. It will be dedicated to the story of Joan of Arc, and it will be string quartet, voice, and Lithuanian kankles. So inviting everyone to keep an eye on that and just stay in touch.
Thank you, Simona, for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. Please remember to visit Simona's website to listen to her music and to keep an eye on the other artists we have on the site. Great and best of luck with your healing journey.
Thank you. Thank you.